Hi, my name is Marianne Goyette, and today I'm going to show you how to take a household object, the apple, and draw it using just two different pencils. We're going to use an H pencil and a 6B pencil. We'll also use a blending stump, which is one of these, or you can use some household item just like a napkin, a Kleenex, or a paper towel for blending. Now sometimes when we get stuck at home, we need to create some fun for ourselves. So all you'll need is basically a desk lamp, one apple, paper, and you can create a really great drawing. Now drawing from observation can be really tricky. There's a lot of information going on when we're looking at an object. And so I want you to think in terms of when you're making a drawing, it's just like baking a cake, right? You start in stages and steps. So with the drawing, we're going to go in stages and steps. First, we're going to start out with the rough sketch, which is made up of the simple shapes that make up the apple. So in this case, the simple shape of it is more of like elongated oval or like a circle. And then there's some straight lines and curved lines. But then also that rough sketch should have the height and width of the apple in your drawing. Now, one thing to consider is always stepping back when checking your work too. So let me demonstrate what that looks like. So when I'm looking at the apple drawing as I'm drawing it, I want to step a few feet back. That way I can compare it. Let me put my apple down here. Then I can compare it. I can step back here and I can compare the drawing to the still life. And when I step back, I can actually see it in a different way. I can see it better. I can see things that I don't see when I'm really up close. When I'm up close, like this, I'm kind of zoomed in. I'm sort of like a microscope. But when I step back, I can see the whole picture. And when I see the whole picture, I can see a lot better. So every once in a while, as you're doing the drawing, you want to be stepping back. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to use our elements of shape. And we're going to use simple shapes to make up what's called the rough sketch. A rough sketch is just a map that shows the height and the width of how our picture is going to be. And it's just the most basic information for our image. Now what I recommend doing is using an H pencil, like a lighter pencil, but if at your house you only have regular pencil, that's fine. So this is the rough sketch. It's both the height and the width of the apple. Now once you've got your rough sketch in, then you're going to start working on what's called the refined sketch. And so the refined sketch, you're going to start putting in more accurately the shapes that you see. So this I'm going in a little bit darker and I'm putting in more of the shapes that I see. Like the angle of the stem curves a little bit, and I'm looking at the distance here from the top of the apple down into the opening. So when we start to put in our values, which is lights and darks, then we're going to notice that the shadow always goes on the opposite side, and then our light source is coming up here, and then it's going to gradually go in planes and become darker and darker. Now the darkest area is right underneath the apple, and it's a very thin, dark line because that's where no light is hitting it. So now that we've got this beginning sketch in, we're going to start putting in the values that we see. So we're going to be using a blending stump and a darker pencil. This is the 6B pencil, and so we're going to go in just a little bit darker. And what we need to do is we're going to squint and we're going to see the shape of the dark value. And the shape, if we're squinting our eyes, kind of comes here like a backward C. Now when shading, you're putting in just the shape that you see. And there's different methods for shading. One, you can use the side of the pencil because the word to draw means to pull. And you'll notice that I'm holding my pencil this way, but you may hold your pencil this way. Notice though, when I hold my pencil this way, it does create a darker line. Now some people, when they're doing shading, they hold their pencil lightly and they gradually build up. Now you'll notice there's a couple of different methods that you can use. You can go back and forth, you can go side to side, which creates kind of a three-dimensional effect, or you can go in small circles. Now I'm going to do what's called cycling. I'm going to stop here and I'm going to move over to this side of the apple to the inside where there's also a very dark value. And then I'm going to make my lines curve around and go up and down. Now I'm going to start in with the stem and I'm going to draw it a little bit darker than before, but I'm going to pay close attention to where the top of the stem comes above the apple. And I'm going to rough in the value of the stem. Now I'm also going to lightly put in the shadow that's cast right here. Now the one thing to remember when making art is that you're always adjusting, right? The idea of art is putting together, fitting together, comes from the Sumerian word that means to fit together. And so as we're progressing in our picture, we're fitting things together. Now sometimes when we make art, we begin to be a little bit frustrated. Now that's perfectly okay. And just know that as that's happening, you're growing the dendrites in your brain. And that problem solving actually makes you a more intelligent person. So if you begin to feel frustrated at all during the drawing of the apple, it's perfectly fine. It just means that you're growing your brain. Now a couple of things to notice is that this area here has kind of a harder edge to it. Notice that the shadow has a softer edge. Right? It doesn't have a clearly defined edge, and that the value is more emphasized, but the edge, the line itself, is more blurry and fluffy. Now when looking at the apple, we have these basic things like value and line and shape and the elements of shape, which are parts of lines in, but now we're going to improve our value and get it a little bit more accurate. Now one thing that we're going to look at is the shape of it. It's going to come over and kind of go in a like upside down moon crest. So what I'll use is a blending stump and I'll start darkening it with the blending stump. Now I curve the blending stump, see, to give the form of the apple. Now when working with students, they love the blending stump because it gives you instant gratification, kind of starts darkening your apple, starts matching your values kind of early. If you don't have a blending stump, what you can do is you can use a Kleenex or you can use a paper towel. That works just as fine. Just remember to always focus in on matching values and making sure you're getting in the darkest of the dark, which is underneath the apple and inside right near the stem. Now you might be saying to yourself, gosh, I wonder how we're going to do the highlight. Well, how we're going to do it is we're going to use the blending stump and we're going to start bringing and carrying over some of the pencil into our lightest value area, which is almost like white. Continue working on the values, taking your time, matching it, the shape, the lightness, and the darkness. Let's start looking at the shape. The light's coming here, and then the planes of the apple are causing this apple to have a very dark area here that goes at a diagonal. Really match your value. You want to look at the still life apple that you have set up. And you're going to go in a little darker where you see it. Now I'm squinting, I'm still adjusting. I feel like it needs to be a little darker still. So I'm gradually building it up. Now I'm squinting as I'm drawing just to check my values. And what I notice is there's a light value in here. So I'm going to use my kneaded eraser just to kind of pat it and fine tune it. And then I might use my kneaded eraser, see how I can shape it into a finer point, and I can start pulling out light values. Can make this a little lighter so it'll pop more. Can use the kneaded eraser to pull out light values that I see here. Even the stem itself has a light and a middle and a dark value. So when light hits something, if you notice, it goes in planes. So the light's hitting here, the light value is up here and it's kind of coming across the side, then there's a middle value, and then there's very dark values. So if you have at least the 3 values in pretty accurately, light, middle, and dark, your picture's going to look pretty realistic. Refining a drawing. You want to cycle around, start putting in values, step back and check your work, erase and adjust from extended observation. So just keep adjusting the lights and darks till you match the values.